Listen, before I even begin, I need you to stay with me until the end of this story. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and comment what you think, because I swear to you what I'm about to tell isn't fiction. My name is Daniel, I'm 34, I fix cars for a living in a small town in northern Pennsylvania, and until a year ago I thought UFOs were just a joke, something for drunk hunters or late-night conspiracy podcasts. But after what happened to me, I can't close my eyes at night without replaying every detail. I wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't chasing lights in the sky or digging into government files. I was just a regular guy, finishing long shifts in the garage, going home to my dog, microwaving leftovers, watching football, and sleeping like everyone else. Everything was normal until that one night in September, when something out there decided I was the one they wanted. It started simple. I was driving home on Route 322, a two-lane road cutting through the woods. It was just past midnight, no other cars, just the beam of my headlights and the occasional flicker of deer eyes from the trees. I had the window cracked, the radio low, and I remember feeling unusually alert, like my body knew something my mind didn't. Then I noticed a light in my rearview mirror. At first, I thought it was another car catching up, except there was no engine sound, no bouncing headlights. Just a single, pale, bluish-white glow that hovered too high and too steady to belong to a vehicle. I told myself it was a helicopter, maybe a state police chopper, but the woods around me were silent. The light kept its distance, neither falling back nor pulling closer, just there, like it was watching. My chest tightened. I pressed the gas, the old Ford pickup groaning as the speedometer climbed past 60. The light matched me perfectly. Every turn I took, it mirrored. Every acceleration, it adjusted. That was the first moment I felt hunted. I turned the radio up, as if classic rock could drown out the pounding in my chest, but my palms were sweating, slipping on the steering wheel. At mile marker 47, the light made its move. It shot forward, faster than anything I'd ever seen, and in less than a second it wasn't behind me anymore. It was directly overhead. My cab filled with an otherworldly glow, brighter than high beams, but not blinding, more like I was standing under a full moon that had descended to treetop level. My dog, Max, was at home waiting, and for a split second, I thought of him, of how he'd be sitting by the door wagging his tail, expecting me to come home. That thought grounded me, gave me the courage to slam the brakes and pull the truck to the side of the road. I killed the engine, opened the door, and stepped out into the night. The woods were alive with crickets, but under that light, everything felt wrong, like the sound was filtered, distant. I looked up. Hovering maybe 100 feet above me was a disc, metallic and silent, with a ring of pulsating lights around its rim. It wasn't spinning. It just floated like gravity didn't apply to it. My knees wanted to buckle, but I forced myself to stay standing. "What the hell do you want?" I yelled, as if shouting at it would make it less terrifying. No answer. Just the low hum, more felt in my bones than heard in my ears. Then came the beam. A column of white, so pure it cut through the branches without a shadow, enveloped me in an instant. My body rose from the ground. I swear to you, I didn't jump, I didn't climb. I was pulled up, weightless, like I was a puppet on strings made of light. My pickup, the asphalt, the woods. All of it shrank beneath me as I ascended into the belly of the craft. My last memory before blacking out was my own scream, echoing in a place where sound shouldn't carry. When I came to, I was lying on a cold surface, not metal exactly, but something smooth and seamless like stone polished to perfection. My arms and legs were heavy, numb, as though they didn't belong to me. I tried to sit up but found straps across my chest and thighs, almost invisible until they tightened against me. Panic rushed in, thick and suffocating. The air was thin, sterile, with no smell of oil, no earthy scent of forest. Just nothing. The silence pressed on me until I heard the first sound. A low, rhythmic clicking, like fingernails tapping glass. Shapes moved in the dim light, At first just shadows, then figures stepping closer. They weren't the gray, bug-eyed cliches you see on TV. These were tall, at least 7 feet, with elongated skulls that sloped back smoothly, their skin pale with a faint bluish sheen, like something that had never seen the sun. Their eyes were large, black, reflective, not blinking but shifting in unison as they studied me. I tried to speak, to demand answers, but my throat locked. It was like my voice was trapped in my chest. One of them extended a hand, or what I thought was a hand. Long fingers jointed oddly, almost too many knuckles, and pressed it near my forehead without touching. A wave of warmth spread through me, numbing the panic, dulling my fear into something like submission. My vision blurred, and then the room changed. Or maybe my perception of it did. The walls dissolved, replaced by endless stars, galaxies smeared across blackness, as if the ship itself had become transparent. I wasn't in control of my body, but I could feel their thoughts pressing into mine, images flashing like someone flipping through channels too fast. Cities burning, oceans boiling, then a vision of Earth, fragile and glowing, spinning in the void. I don't know if they were warning me or testing me, but every image sank into me like a brand. One of them leaned closer, and for the first time I felt words, not through my ears but inside my skull. "You are seen." That was it. Just 3 words, but they weren't English, not really. The meaning simply unfolded in my mind, undeniable, like it had always been there. My body jerked, resisting, and the straps dug into my skin. I forced my throat to open, rasping out, "Why me?" The clicking grew louder, overlapping, like they were communicating among themselves. Then silence again. Another being entered the room, different from the rest. Shorter, its skin darker, with faint luminescent lines tracing patterns across its chest. It carried something that looked like a frame of light, shifting and unstable, yet solid in its grip. It placed the frame over me, lowering it until my entire body was bathed in vibrating energy. Pain erupted, not sharp, but deep, as if every bone in my body was being scanned, mapped, rewritten. I couldn't scream, my jaw locked, but tears spilled down my temples. When the frame lifted away, the shorter figure tilted its head, studying me like a mechanic checking a faulty engine. And then it did something I still don't understand. It touched my chest with 2 fingers, and for a moment I felt my heartbeat stop. Darkness swallowed me whole. I woke again, not on the table but in a chamber I can only describe as impossible. The ceiling stretched upward into infinity, though I knew it couldn't, not inside a ship. Symbols glowed faintly along the walls, shapes like spirals, triangles folding into themselves, circles with lines that pulsed like veins. The air here felt thicker, heavy with static that prickled across my skin. I wasn't strapped down anymore. I stood, my legs shaky, but somehow I knew I was expected to move forward. At the center of the chamber was a pedestal, and above it floated a sphere, perfectly black, like a hole cut into reality. I should have run. I should have collapsed. But instead I stepped closer, drawn like a moth to flame. The closer I came, the louder the humming in my skull grew, until it wasn't sound at all but thought, alien thought, drilling into me, layering over my own. Chosen, watched, remembered. The words weren't comforting, they were terrifying. My whole life flashed in rapid cuts. My childhood backyard, my first bike, my mother's voice, Max waiting at the door. Then the visions twisted, showing me futures that couldn't be mine. Me standing in deserts I'd never seen, cities that didn't exist, skies split open with light. I stumbled back, gasping, clutching my head, but the sphere pulsed and held me there. They wanted something. I didn't know what, but every nerve in my body told me it wasn't mercy. I don't remember how long I stood there, forehead pressed against the thin barrier of my own panic, watching that black sphere breathe like a living thing, but time inside that room lost meaning. When one of the taller beings approached, It moved with a grace that made my lungs tighten. It didn't look at me with curiosity or malice, but with something colder: assessment. It reached out and, to my surprise, offered me a small object wrapped in a cloth that smelled faintly of ozone. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. Under the cloth was a disc of metal the size of my palm, etched with those spiral symbols from the walls. The shorter being, call it the technician, placed its slender fingers over mine and guided my hand until the disc lay flat in my palm. The moment skin met metal, my vision fractured. I was no longer standing in that chamber. I was back in the Ford, seat warm, Max sleeping on the floor mat. I could feel rain hitting the windshield, though there was no rain. Smell coffee, though none was brewing. Snatches of other lives. Men with faces I'd never seen. Languages I didn't know. A child laughing in a room painted red. Flashed through me. Each image hit like a wave, then receded, leaving behind a residue of emotion so strong I tasted it. When the visions ended, I was back in the chamber, but different. The pedestal was gone, the sphere now a dull lump in the room's center. The taller being looked at me and, this time, the thought that came was clear, unbroken. "We take what remembers." I asked, voice splitting, "What does that mean? What do you want from me?" The answer came not as words, but as a torrent of associations. Memory, continuity, death, survival. They weren't interested in organs or DNA. They wanted stories, lived histories woven into neural patterns, bits of experience that tied a consciousness to its world. I laughed then, a short, hysterical sound, because it was absurd and yet it made a terrifying kind of sense. Memory is the map of a life. If you could graft someone else's map into a mind, you could guide them, teach them, erase them, or seed them with a foreign purpose. They tested me next. Small probes, images, tastes, smells were pressed against my mind, and I had to identify them, to anchor them with a name or a place. Red Barn, they showed. I said, "My uncle's farm." A woman's laugh. I said, "Mary from high school." Each correct association seemed to please them. Each hesitation drew a flicker of irritation across their faces. At one point they flooded me with a memory that wasn't mine. A platform crowded with thousands of people, chanting, raising their arms in unison beneath a sky cut by luminous pillars. The technician watched my reaction, and when I flinched it leaned in and tapped the disc in my hand. The disc responded, warm now, as if alive, and imprinted the foreign scene across my mind with the quiet cruelty of a tattoo. Later, they told me, through images and those cold, precise thoughts, that they had been watching Earth for centuries, collecting fragments of minds whose patterns could sustain what they called carriers. Some species die out. Some lose their ability to transmit memory to future generations. They harvest where necessary to preserve their continuity across space. "You are valuable," was how it came to me. Not an honor, more a clinical note. Over the next hours, days, I became a vessel of matches. They fed me flashes of other people's childhoods, their first kisses, the exact scent of bread baking in kitchens around the world. I learned to identify not only objects but the emotional weight behind them. How grief clings to a last letter, how love smells of salt and old sweaters. In return, sometimes they allowed me small freedoms. A walk through corridors that resembled a museum of human moments. Rooms where they replayed scenes they had collected. I watched a man in a suit light a cigarette at a train station in Osaka. A mother braid her daughter's hair in Lagos. An old couple share soup in a flat in Prague. Those moments kept me sane. They also made me furious. One night, I think it was night, though there were no windows, I saw through a gap in a doorway a sight that made my stomach roll. A chamber lined with containers, each one glowing faintly with a different hue. Inside some containers were people, curled like sleeping animals, their faces peaceful as if in dreamless sleep. Other containers held fragments. An old woman's laugh as a looped recording, a child's toy, a swirl of light that pulsed to the rhythm of a heartbeat. I realized then that I was not the only one taken. Names I had never heard were cataloged and stored, their essences harvested into objects and lights. The technician noticed me watching, and for a moment the machine in it seemed to hesitate. Curiosity, pity? Then it moved on. I kept thinking about Max, the mundane details of my life I'd taken for granted, and I promised myself I'd cling to them with everything I had. I started repeating things under my breath. My mother's phone number, the smell of motor oil in the garage, the way my dog tilts his head when he doesn't understand. Saying them anchored me, like tying a rope to the last bridge out of a river. They tested me cruelly after that, offering me false memories to see if I'd accept them. A life where I'd never owned a dog, a childhood where my father left. Small edits meant to unmoor me. Each time I resisted, the disc in my palm growing colder as if disappointed. Sometimes I failed. Sometimes I woke with a new ache, a phantom limb of memory that wasn't mine. Those graphs made me a stranger to myself. Yet even as they remade pieces of me, some part of Daniel, the man who fixed pickups and loved sloppy coffee, refused to go quiet. I clung to that stubbornness like a talisman, biding my time, listening for patterns in their behavior I could use, waiting for a moment to act. I don't know when exactly I realized the cracks in their control, but the signs were there if you looked closely. The taller ones never touched the containers themselves. Always the smaller technicians did. The symbols carved into the walls pulsed in a rhythm I began to recognize, like breathing, and every so often the lights dimmed, as though the ship itself needed to rest. I knew that if I didn't find a way to break free during one of those moments, I'd end up like the others, stored as a fragment, an echo. The chance came when they escorted me back to the chamber with the black sphere. By then, the disc in my palm had become a part of me. It no longer felt like metal but like a second pulse, sometimes syncing with my heart, sometimes beating against it. That day, if it was day, they pressed me to the sphere again, trying to graft more images into me. But something different happened. Instead of receiving their thoughts passively, I felt resistance, like a wall inside me. My own memories. Max waiting at the door, the smell of hot asphalt in summer, my father teaching me how to change a carburetor. Rose up, sharper, louder than anything they fed me. The sphere flickered, its surface rippling like disturbed water. The taller beings froze, their black eyes widening for the first time since I'd seen them. The technician reached for me, but the disc in my hand flared hot, searing my skin, and the chamber shook with a low vibration. I don't know if it was defiance or a glitch, but suddenly their flood of alien images collapsed and I was alone in my own head again. I took that chance. I slammed the disc against the pedestal, shattering it into fragments of glowing shards that dissolved into the air. The chamber roared with sound. Alarms maybe, a language of panic I couldn't understand. The sphere pulsed violently and then collapsed inward, leaving only a faint ring of light like a burn mark in the air. I didn't wait. I ran, sprinting down corridors that shifted and bent, chasing any path that felt like escape. Behind me, the clicking of their limbs echoed like a swarm, growing louder. My lungs burned, but adrenaline drove me forward. I burst into a chamber lined with the containers again. For a moment I froze, seeing dozens of faces trapped in their glowing prisons, some human, some not. I wanted to help them, to smash the glass and drag them out, but I knew I couldn't. If I tried, I'd be lost with them. So I forced myself to keep moving, whispering, "I'm sorry," with every step. The path ended in a small bay, where a hatch opened onto blinding white light. I didn't think, I leapt. The air hit me like ice, the world spinning, my body weightless. For a sickening second I thought I'd be vaporized, burned to ash between stars. Then I realized I was falling. The ground rushed up, treetops breaking my descent. Branches tore at my arms, my face, until I hit the forest floor hard enough to knock the breath from me. I lay there gasping, staring at a sky where the ship hovered, silent, watching. And then, as if deciding I wasn't worth the trouble, it rose higher and higher until it was just another star swallowed by the night. I don't remember walking home. Somehow I did, stumbling through the woods until I collapsed on my porch, Max barking wildly inside. When I woke, the sun was up, my body bruised and bloodied, but alive. The disc was gone, nothing left but a faint scar in the center of my palm, a circle burned into flesh. Since that night, nothing has been the same. Sometimes I dream their dreams, alien skies, endless cities built from light. Sometimes I hear the clicking when I'm alone in the garage. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I feel the cold grip of memory that isn't mine. I don't know why they chose me, or if they'll come back. But I know this: I wasn't just hunted. I was claimed. And if you're hearing this now, maybe you're next.